Hello, everyone, and welcome to TSAM Digital. I'm Ana Luisa, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Verena Charvet, Specialist Consultant at Merrill's Consulting. Welcome, Verena.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. So, Verena, before we get started, would you like to say a couple of words about yourself and about the work that you do?
My name, as you've probably gathered, is Verena Charvet. I'm the Managing Director of Merrill's Consulting, a boutique consulting firm specializing in smaller to medium-sized firms. We tend to consider ourselves to be all things regulatory because our clients quite often will start with one question and then it leads into a much wider range of issues that they'd like support on. So we are probably very user-friendly. That's how we think of ourselves.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that introduction. So today we wanted to talk about two regulations, SDR and SFDR. So I wanted to kick off firstly by asking you, what do UK-based asset managers and global asset managers that want to do business in the UK need to know about SDR?
Essentially, I think the critical thing is that the reporting requirements are very new. The levels and amounts of disclosure are still under discussion, and there is still some debate in the industry about the way in which the information should be presented. We are seeing some very useful sort of principles coming forward, and in fact, the UK FCA has been at great lengths to try and ensure that there is an understanding that being penalised for gaps in information is not something that firms should be worried about. What they need to be focusing on is actually providing the reports and not delaying because they feel they haven't got enough information. Obviously, there are plenty of providers out there, but what we are seeing is that firms are struggling a bit. And obviously, it's not helped by the fact that actually the UK SFDR is different, the UK SDR is different from the EU SFDR. And obviously for some organisations, they are operating in mainland Europe and the UK, and therefore there is a little bit of a struggle to make sure that they're getting the same report, the right reporting in the right environment. So that definitely is a challenge. I think it's something that advisors are also sort of struggling to try and help their clients address this in the most straightforward way and to avoid wasting costs. So it is very sensible to get advice early on to make sure that you are actually looking at the right information. There are obviously plenty of firms, accountants and consultants who are very willing to give their advice on this.
Absolutely. So you actually mentioned there are some differences between the two regulations. What would you say are the sort of main differences between them?
I think the level of granularity does differ quite a lot. I think for a number of people, they are seeing the SFDR, which has been deferred now until next year. They were doing quite well in preparing for it and in getting the type of information that they needed for the three classifications of funds, and the underlying explanation and the methodology was coming together quite nicely. The difficulty, which I think the regulators have recognised, is that there is a lack of guidance in this area. There is a lack of RTS, the regulatory technical standards. And this means, and that's obviously in the EU environment, and this means that not always is the information enabling people to compare apples with apples. So as the purpose of this reporting isn't just sort of a government idea or a regulatory idea, it's actually to give real benefit to investors. That is definitely a key concern, is that there is not a sort of one size fits all solution to this. And there isn't just one set of guidance that says, do this and you'll be fine. That definitely is the situation. Now, obviously in the UK, the regulations and rules here are even newer. And obviously because the UK has looked rather more actually to sort of the Australian models rather than the mainland EU models, there is a little bit of a, I suppose, a sort of mismatch of fundamental approaches. So sort of if you're looking at this in a sort of nice theoretical way, and you're looking at the implications of where and what the drivers are. What you've got is the UK looking in one direction and the EU looking in a different direction. And that does mean that, you know, some of the concepts hopefully are sort of going to come together and align, but at the minute there is still a bit of a gap between the two areas. And that means that whilst, you know, you can sit down and sort of try and do a sort of tick box exercise, you still will find that there are bits left over where you're actually going, okay, so how do I deal with that bit? Or what do I do with it? I know that a lot of firms are actually taking the view that if they are operating in both jurisdictions, the answer is to look and see which one is more comprehensive, which arguably is actually the EU SFDR, and use that for everything. Now, that isn't quite what the regulators want. And the other problem with that is that when you get into the UK environment, you'll find that you have gaps. So you can't just say, right, I'm going to follow this and that'll be my solution. So it's not the easiest thing to try and do at the moment.
I agree. That definitely seems to be the sort of consensus across the industry. And of course, you mentioned top challenges that asset managers are facing in complying with the two regulations. Any advice in sort of dealing with these or overcoming these challenges, kind of going forward, maybe this year or coming into next year even?
I think what we're going to see is that probably during this year, we're going to get a lot of people trying to figure out how to fix this. And certainly talking with my clients, what they've been looking at is they have been looking at the methodologies. They've been looking where their larger organizations are developing their own methodologies, taking some of the very good principles that we're actually seeing coming forward. A lot of the larger firms of accountants, for example, have been putting out a lot of papers on this, as have a lot of very big law firms. And what they're doing is that they're hoping very much that they will end up with a situation where by the time they get to 1 January 2023, when SFDR comes into play properly, they will actually have managed to resolve this. Clearly, one of the things they're also thinking about, particularly if, say, they are operating funds which are UK-based funds, they're thinking about whether or not what's going on in the UK is going to be adequate for those clients, because as we know, quite often reporting has to be client driven as well as regulatorily driven. And so if you've got clients who are investing into your funds and they're sitting in a different jurisdiction, you quite often find that you're actually going to have to generate the information that they need in their regulatory environment. Obviously, also some funds are formally being distributed as AIFs in other jurisdictions, which obviously UK funds are now post-Brexit in Europe. And so they actually have to make sure that they are complying with the information in the jurisdiction in which the funds are being sold, so that the individual investors are receiving the information that they should be receiving. And that, I think, has created a bit more, I mean, this has always been a problem, if you want to call it a problem, but it's a challenge is a better word. And so what we're seeing now is we're actually seeing a number of organizations really doing that very, very in-depth assessment where they're larger organizations. Obviously, the solution for some firms has been that they actually have EU mainland, and then they have UK funds. And what they do is they are structured differently. They're more designed for home investors, and therefore the information that they're going to be releasing to meet their requirements under the local regulatory requirements on all this information about disclosure is actually going to be just one set. And that's how a lot of them are working. And they're effectively trying to ensure that they don't have any investors from that jurisdiction. Now that's pretty difficult because, of course, investors move. And although, you know, with institutional, you can quite often find ways around this. If you've got something where you've got retail investors, then obviously what you've got is you've got that situation where it's much more complicated than just being able to say, well, you can't have the fund, because they may have been perfectly able to have it and it's fine at that point, and then it subsequently isn't. So anyway, sorry, we're slightly off topic with that part.
No, absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. We definitely appreciate your take on this. So I do want to see how things progress, and maybe we can sort of keep track on it, because it's obviously nothing's been finalized. And I think as managers, we want to know how things are evolving going forward, and even coming into 2023, maybe we can do a reassessment of where we are.
I think so. I think what we're going to be seeing is this is all firming up. And I think, you sort of got against this the background of things like the European Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. So you've got that whole element coming through, which is the sustainability and the reporting on your funds, but also the element which is around you as an organization as well. So you've got these sort of two dynamics happening at the same time. And a lot of organizations are focusing on their products, but they're not actually focusing on what they themselves have got to do. And obviously some elements of this depend on the size of the organization. You have to be a very big organization before you're actually focusing on some of these issues. But the principles are definitely coming down. It's cascading down through the industry. And that what we will see ultimately will be a very much higher degree of reporting, transparency, and information available on organizations and their products. So it is a big step change, but it's probably a very important one in the current environment.
Absolutely. I think we're on the right track with this. So I look forward to kind of seeing how things develop. And thank you so much, Verena, for your insight today. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for asking me to comment. Thank you.